All right, hello and welcome back to Food Chain Wars. This is a show where we break down e-commerce and direct marketing strategies for farm to fork brands who are trying to compete with some of the biggest folks inside the industry. And our goal is to take our experience that we're learning and the experience we're learning from our clients over at GrazeCart to help share and break down strategies to you that allow you to help climb the value chain and capture back market share. So my name is Brooks Hitsfield, your host, and I'm joined as always with my brother Blaine, CEO of Seven Sons.
Howdy.
And what we're going to do today, this is going to be our second episode in the series of Don't Screw Up. This is a fun series, and we'll keep this going, I think, for a while. But the whole idea is to break down the silent killers inside of your business, the things that if you don't put focus towards and maybe you neglect, can really cause a catastrophe. So these are the Trojan horses. While you're managing the day-to-day, everything feels okay. And before you know it, because of the neglect here, things can get upside down quickly. So the topic today, Blaine, we're digging into pricing. And this is kind of an obvious one. If you don't stay ahead on pricing and managing your margins, you're going to struggle to be able to grow the business because you're not going to be able to hire the people you need to and delegate responsibilities. You're not going to be able to help gain awareness, get your brand in front of customers, pay for advertising. And there's a long list of, obviously, this is what makes the whole thing turn and go around and for you to be able to scale even faster. And to kick this off, Blaine, I've asked you to kind of just share, go back and think about experience at Seven Sons. What are some of the most difficult pricing situations or even just times where we have fallen prey to not staying on top of pricing and letting this kind of be that Trojan horse that overruns the castle?
Yeah, it's one of the easiest things to kick the can on because a lot of times it involves, uncomfortably looking at the numbers. You have this feeling it's probably off, and so you procrastinate looking at them, and you don't want to have the difficult conversations with customers. But this bit us really bad, Brooks, in the middle of COVID. So anything that we were kicking the can on during COVID and that big influx of customers, anything we were kicking the can on, we had to deal with pretty fast. So we had a situation, Brooks, where we had one of our distributors that they were mainly a distributor for our eggs, but we decided to give a shot at the meat program through their distribution channel. And the reality is, we knew it from the get-go, but there wasn't enough margin in that relationship. And we probably shouldn't have went down that path to begin with, but we did it anyways, and then we lost track of some of our cost, and we neglected to increase their price over the period of about a year and a half. When COVID hit, we were desperately trying to find inventory for our retail customers, and It was a real killer to see inventory going out through this distribution channel almost at in many cases, Brooks, it was break even to a loss in some of the products that we were selling.
Yeah.
And it really bit us bad because, of course, their needs exponentially went up. So the opportunity cost was absolutely huge. And guess what? In the middle of the pandemic, was that a great time to let someone know that we need to raise your price?
Yeah.
The absolute worst time to say that. And so we ended up starting to kind of triage and not get that customer what they needed. Then we had to be honest that, to be honest, we're not making any profit when we're selling it to you. So ultimately, we had to do a price increase. They had to increase for their customers. It really it damaged the relationship, Brooks, and it hasn't recovered.
Yeah.
And so timing, and that all happened because we weren't willing to deal with the situation proactively.
Yeah, and I think that's an example of where COVID kind of accelerated, a time period where if you neglect something, then you can get yourself in a really bad situation even quicker. So that's something to remember too. This is even more important the faster your business is moving. So if you're in a growth stage, it's very important not to get this out of line because it causing catastrophe can just happen so much faster because you're making commitments to expand supply and then you're selling it at a bad margin. So bad numbers just going in the wrong direction faster. So that's really important to think about. Is there a rule of thumb that you would, give out there for anyone listening to this episode that if they haven't looked and readdressed or increased pricing in X amount of time, that they really need to sit down and go back to this?
We're looking at pricing basically every week or two, but that's at our scale. I would think, if you're a bit smaller, just getting started, it should be looked at minimum every 3 months, or anytime something changed. I've got to look at it. So
and it's so important. And something that we need to remember is incredibly commonplace for the food industry. And I think that's something that's easy for us to forget, because you look at other industries and it might not be as common, but for the food industry, it is. You go and buy seafood at a seafood restaurant, the price might not even be on the menu. It's market price, because it's the factors that go into the cost are changing so quickly. So it's something important to stay on top of. What would you say is the number one pricing mistake or misconception that you see people make out there?
Well, I don't know if this is like a number one cause of not having correct pricing or viable pricing. Is just, and everyone knows this, but it's not knowing your cost. And when you don't know your cost, I think a couple different things happen, but you won't make confident decisions. It will paralyze you with uncertainty. So let's say you have an opportunity to serve a large-scale wholesale customer. If you don't know your costs, you cannot make a decision. Is this a good decision to take on this wholesale customer at this price, or is it not? So even to this day, Brooks, we still do that. When we have a wholesale opportunity that comes to us, it's good volume, we will run a very in-depth analysis, and we could not run that analysis if we didn't know what our cost is. The other thing that when you don't know your cost, you can't diagnose and fix problems. It's very difficult to keep yourself on the rails if you don't know what your costs are. One thing that we've done over the years, Brooks, is we've always tracked our cost per pound for fulfillment. So how much labor cost do we have in every pound that moves through our farm warehouse? And, we've watched that over the years, and some years and periods it's gone up, and we've known, okay, this is a signal, it's something to address, and we've had to hire around how do we create efficiencies now as we grow. So.
Yeah, and that's important, because if you don't know your costs, the answer might not always be that you need to raise pricing. There might be a problem somewhere where you can actually rein in on the expense side, but it's impossible to diagnose that if you're if you're not analyzing this and watching this on a routine basis.
And you won't have the confidence to raise your price either if you don't know that, hey, there's nothing. I've looked at all the cost. I've given it, and you can speak transparently to your customer that I have analyzed this up and down, and I'm convicted, and I know. One thing I think is super important to have is conviction in your price. And you cannot have conviction in your price unless you know your costs and you've taken the time to do that. I got to share a quick story, Brooks.
Yep.
When I was at Whole Foods headquarters, and I think it's in Austin, Texas, for a regenerative ag day that they had for their executive team, they brought in a panel of farmers. One of the other panelists with me was Will Harris, and the topic of pricing came up. One of the executives sitting there in front, he was a head buyer for Whole Foods corporate in their meat department, asked us on the panel, okay, this is all great, this regenerative farming thing, but how's the retail customer going to afford it? Like, it costs more. And I remember, some people gave some answers, and then Will Harris spoke up, and he went through a long list of what it takes to farm regeneratively. He went through a long list of all the things that they're doing, the sacrifices they're making, the sacrifices that future generations at White Oak Pastures will make, the debt that they're taking on to build these processing plants, to buy the land, to make it all work. And at the end of that conversation, he said, now, I'm doing a lot here. And at the end of the day, he turned to the executive and said, how is someone going to afford it? He's like, I'm doing everything humanly possible. And as far as how someone's going to afford it, that he looks right at him and points his finger and said, that's on you. That's your job to figure that. I can't solve every problem in this whole food chain equation when it comes to regenerative food supply and revolutionizing the food system. We all have to work together. But he had that conviction to say that because he knew what they were doing. They knew the investment they were making. And he knew they cannot have anything less. If they're going to change the food system and have a regenerative food supply, Will Harris knew there's nothing else I'm going to do to cut cost.
I love that story. I was hoping you were going to give your best Will Harris impression, but
no,
you missed it.
Yeah.
But no, I think it is an important thing to remember. And the thing is, too, if you back all the way back up to what you're saying about not knowing your costs, that's also when you're tempted to just look at competitor pricing because you don't have the confidence. So you turn to your competitors to see what are they doing. And the problem here is, of course, you do want to take into account what are the competition, pricing at, what's the market going rate, to make sure that you're taking that into account when you make pricing decisions. But you don't want to base those decisions solely on that, because a common misconception that we see for people who are getting started in the early days is it's really easy to think that your competitors are the farmer down the road or someone else who's in your state selling a similar product as your competitor. And the thing is, they could be doing the exact same thing that you're doing as well. And then all of a sudden, everyone who's small is just pricing off each other. And usually when you're starting out too, one of your ways to differentiate, it's always the easiest thing to differentiate to try to gain market share is, well, I'm just going to be priced a little bit lower than Whole Foods or Butcher Box or some of those guys, and that'll help me grow. So you got all these people who are kind of doing the same thing, and that's where you're going to see lower margins. And especially that's important because at that scale, you're generally going to have lower margins anyways, because your overhead costs are going to be higher because you have not picked up the economies of scale. So
blind leading the blind.
When you do the competitor analysis, always turn to who are the biggest people in your industry selling what you're selling. That's your competition. That's what consumers would look at as the competitive going price, not the farmer who's down the road.
Yep. All good points there. I wanted to follow up, Brooks, as far as common hangups when it comes to actually knowing your cost. One thing that I hear, and something that we got trapped in, Brooks, was like, okay, I need to analyze my cost, right? So what do I do? I turn to my records, my historic records in QuickBooks or whatever. Generally, if you're small starting off, the way it was for us, our records were a mess. It was hard to tell heads or tails of it. And generally, it can be discouraging when you're like, I can't even track my costs at this point. It's a mess. I don't know how to decipher this, and you give up. Something that I encourage everyone to do is when you're trying to figure out what your price and margin needs to be, at least have an economic calculator moving forward. So you at least can determine what's my price of feed today? What's the cost to purchase a box to ship perishable foods in?
Yep.
You have all today's figures that will tell you what your cost is going to be tomorrow. And that's a much simpler exercise to do. Don't get hung up on trying to look back at historic cost when you can just build an economic calculator to move forward with. So,
when it comes to pricing and thinking about, okay, what should my prices be? I know this is a question that I hear often, and I want to get your take on it. Is where does that threshold fall? What are some guidelines, maybe some principles that people can follow when it comes to what should margins be? What should pricing be? I know something that I hear often is, well, I want to charge a fair price. What is a fair price? In that sense,
a fair price is whatever the buyer is willing to pay for that, Brooks. That's the fair price. And I think of, because I think there's a mission-driven effect of those that are in regenerative agriculture. And hey, we'd all love to sell our product at the same price as a grocery store, make it as affordable as possible. But that's not reality. And I think we get caught in the idea that I don't want to sell it for any more than what I would be willing to pay for it. And the truth is, at Seven Sons, and we sell filet mignons for, I don't know, $60 a pound.
Yeah.
I don't buy filet mignons here, and they sell like crazy. I'm not that buyer. I'm not willing to pay, but our customers are willing to pay that much. And so that's what determines the price for us. It's not based on my conscience. It's what a customer is willing to pay. And I always tell folks that you owe it to your customer to be profitable and to stay in business the next year.
What about margin examples? Are there numbers at all that you feel like people should try to strive for? And maybe this is different depending on the stage that you're at, which I think it is. But what are some goals to shoot for here?
We shoot for. It depends. As a business, we shoot for a 35% year-over-year margin. It's different for retail versus wholesale. We did an episode just a few episodes back on this, but on wholesale, we shoot for 25 to 28% margin.
Yeah.
On retail, it's anywhere from that 35 to 45% margin.
And break that down, because I know some people will throw different things inside of there. So what all costs are getting tracked in those margin examples? That way people can do the exercise on their side.
We like looking at that with all costs included, delivered. So think of it, how much cost do you have in every box and every pound of meat by the time it's delivered to the doorstep? If you're doing home delivery like us or shipping, every cost. So the cost of the box, the dry ice,
credit card processing
fees, anything that's incrementally.
Meat processing goes into that as well. So
refunds,
and of course the cost of the product, where we, I think a lot of people too who might be listening to this, you might have your marketing business broken out separate versus the production business. Yeah. So of course the cost to make that exchange between the two businesses to purchase the raw goods goes into that as well. But yeah, it's basically anything that is static. Any cost that is static for every pound, every order going out the door, cost thresholds relatively stay similar. That's what we're trying to lump up and roll into there, versus overheads are things that you might have to make some overhead changes over the years and make some investments there, but they're much more static when it comes to every order and every customer that you serve.
I think we even include a like 2% of the retail price we know is going to have to be held back for refunds. So that's built right into the cost per pound.
Yep. So cool. What would you say to someone who's listening and they realize they need to make a major pricing correction, or maybe they realized before they're listening to the episode and this is just kind of confirmed that, yes, this is something I should go back at and do. And if it's significant, I know we've talked about this at different times, but if it's significant, that can obviously be a hard thing to do. What are some guidance, some best practices people can follow to soften the blow when it comes to communicating this with your customers?
Brooks, we've done a podcast, haven't we, on what's the name of that podcast? But it's basically our strategy that we use when communicating large price increases with our customers.
Yeah, there's this was, 2 years or so, but it is, there's no dust effect on it. The same exact principles that we lay out in that episode is what we still use today. And, it's actually a strategy that it works regardless of what industry that you're in. And we've used the same formula, even for GrazeCart, because this has happened for, that business too, where we've had to pull some pricing levers where we realized we weren't tracking our costs and weren't thinking about and predicting what those would end up being as the business grew. Yep. And we had to make adjustments. So I forget the name of the episode too, but we'll leave a link to it at the bottom, something about increasing your prices and not losing customers or retaining all your customers.
Like a 3-step formula. It's all about just being upfront and honest and giving your customers some time to absorb that price increase before you actually make it. So
and that episode has a resource on it called the price increase formula. It's just a little guide that we broke down. We actually show an example of an email that we've sent to our customers. I think it was when we were doing a major increase on pricing on lamb across the board. Yeah. And it broke down what was the messaging, how did we address it, how did we explain it with the customers. And believe it or not, I think that was like our record lamb week in sales when we made that announcement. So not only has this been a tool and a formula that we've used to soften the blow with our customers, it can actually be an opportunity to drive revenue on a certain category as well, and retain customers through that.
And actually build trust because you're being transparent about why you've had to make price increases.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Be honest about what happened. And again, I know these can sometimes just be that, we weren't watching this close enough. We didn't quite fully understand our costs.
Yeah. I mean, the best price increase strategy is to watch it consistently and make those increases incrementally as you need to. But time gets away from us.
You don't always have to announce. I think this is something that people can get themselves in trouble with too, is thinking that you have to always announce when you're making a price increase or price change on one item or two items here. We're constantly moving the price around. Again, the price isn't on the menus at restaurants. Grocery stores increase pricing all the time without notifying their customers, so that's fine to do. But if you have to make a significant change, you don't want to just put a significant increase, new number out there for all of your loyal customers to come back to you and be like, what's going on? Yeah. So that's a big difference there. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
One final thought, Brooks, is just to remember that as we're in a period of inflation right now, and it's just important to remember that you cannot carry the load. Your business can't carry the load of inflation. You have to pass those cost increases to your customer, as painful as sometimes it can be. But that's just a reality. Again, we owe it to our customers to be profitable.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe. We drop a new episode every other week. Sometimes it's just us. Sometimes we're interviewing another expert in the industry who's had a lot of success to break down what's gotten them to that point. So be sure to subscribe and tune in next time.